When most biopics get announced, the reaction is usually pretty simple. People ask who is playing the lead. They ask whether the actor looks convincing. They watch the trailer. And then they decide whether the movie seems worth watching. But the Michael movie does not really feel that simple. Because from the outside, this does not feel like a normal biopic. It feels like a movie carrying a strange kind of pressure. Not just because of the name. Not just because of the expectations. But because this film already feels like it is building towards something bigger than a standard rise and fall story. And that is what makes it interesting. Because when you look at the way this movie is being presented, it is clearly not trying to feel small. It is not trying to feel like a quiet little portrait of a famous artist. It is aiming for scale, emotion, legacy, spectacle. And the moment a movie makes that kind of promise, the audience starts looking at it differently. They stop asking, will this be decent? They start asking, can this actually deliver what it seems to be promising? And that is where the real curiosity starts. Because this is not a story about someone the audience barely knows. This is a story about one of the most famous entertainers in modern history. That means the movie is not just introducing a character. It is stepping into an image that already exists in millions of people's minds. And that is a very difficult thing to do. Because with Michael Jackson, people are not walking in neutral. They already know the performances. They already know the public image. They already know the scale of the fame. They already know the icon. So now the movie has to do something harder than normal. It has to take a figure that people already think they understand, and make them feel something new. That is not easy. And maybe that is why the Michael movie already feels so watched. Because audiences are not only checking whether it looks good. They are checking whether it feels believable. Whether it feels big enough. Whether it feels emotionally real. Whether it feels like a movie that understands just how enormous that legacy actually is. And the more you think about that, the more this project starts to feel less like a normal biopic and more like a test. A test of tone. A test of performance. A test of scale. A test of whether a movie can step into a story this large and still hold together. That is where the suspense comes from. Not from plot twists. From expectation. Because expectation creates its own kind of tension. The trailer footage, the stage moments, the crowd imagery, the dramatic close-ups. All of it feels designed to tell you that this movie wants to be experienced like an event. Not just watched. Experienced. And that is a very high bar. Because once a film starts asking to be seen that way, people become much more demanding. They start paying attention to every detail. Every movement. Every shot. Every emotional beat. Every performance moment. They do not just want resemblance. They want presence. And that may be the most important part of this whole thing. Because a movie like this does not succeed just because the costumes look right or the choreography looks accurate. It works only if the audience feels that the film is building towards something emotionally powerful. Something that justifies the scale. Something that makes the whole project feel necessary. And that is exactly why this movie has such a different energy around it. It does not feel casual. It feels watched. It feels judged before release. It feels like the kind of movie people are already measuring against the idea they have in their head. And that is a dangerous position for any film to be in. Because once the expectation becomes that large, even good may not feel like enough. The film has to do more than function. It has to land. It has to make people feel that all this scale, all this pressure, all this attention was leading somewhere. That there was a real reason the movie was made this way. And that is why I think the most interesting thing about Michael is not just who it is about. It is what the movie seems to be building toward. Because the more you look at it, the more it feels like this film is trying to become more than a biography. It feels like it wants to become a cinematic event. A movie that does not just recreate famous moments, but tries to carry the weight of the legacy itself. And that is exactly where the curiosity becomes suspense. Because now the question is no longer just, will this be good? Now the question becomes, can this movie actually carry all of that weight, and still feel powerful when it is finally in front of us? That is the tension. That is why people keep watching the trailers closely. That is why every shot feels like it is being studied. And that is why this movie already feels different from a lot of other biopics before it even arrives. Because it is not just selling a story. It is selling the feeling that something major is being attempted. And whenever a film gives off that kind of energy, people pay attention. Not because they already know exactly what it is, but because they are trying to figure out whether it can become what it is promising to be. And maybe that is the best way to describe the Michael movie right now. Not simple hype. Not simple nostalgia. A build-up. A sense of pressure. A sense of scale. And the feeling that this film is reaching for something much bigger than a standard biopic. So maybe the real question is not just whether Michael will be entertaining, Maybe the real question is this. When the full movie finally arrives, will it feel like a performance people admire? Or the kind of event people remember?